to another episode of Breaking Boundaries, the world's premier podcast for international students, or at least that's what I tell the guests. I'm honored today to be joined by David Adler, the founder and CEO of Applywave. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, John, thanks for having me.
Yes. Now, you have a unique perspective because you're an expert on global education and you're also a former international student athlete in the US. And I'm really interested to dive into your own journey as a student athlete. But before we get there, do you mind sharing a little bit about your work at Applywave?
Yeah, I mean, Applywave came after more than 25 years after being an international student athlete. And Applywave really helps international students to find what we call the best fit institution for them. And by saying best fit is based on their what they want to, what kind of experience they want to, where they want to study, what they want to study, but also look into budgets, how much it costs, what scholarship is available for them, what kind of experience they're going to have. Is it going to be in a city experience, by the beach experience? Many international students like myself, like the warm weather. So where are the schools with the warm weather under $15,000 that offer scholarship for international students? So think about it as a booking.com for educations and schools, or Airbnb for students who wants to study in the US or elsewhere.
I love it. Airbnb with just a slightly longer duration than the
Exactly.
typical time. Well, you mentioned the best fit. You also mentioned beaches, which might be a clue to my second question. But you grew up in Israel, Tel Aviv, and traveled to University of South Florida for college. Am I correct in guessing that the proximity of a beach and warm weather were keys to your best fit as you ran the numbers?
So absolutely. So I played basketball here in Israel, was a national team player, play for one of the best club here in the country. And I was recruited by many universities. And it really came down to three, right? And I was invited to do what it's called official visit, where they bring you on campus and show you around. So it came down to LaSalle in Philadelphia. Back in the days, and actually over there, it's an interesting story. I played against Kobe Bryant when he was 16 years old on a pickup
Wow.
game because his dad was his dad was the assistant coach for LaSalle University. Uh, so I met him and I asked his dad after the visit, is Kobe gonna play at LaSalle? And he said he hoped so, and he ended up in the NBA. So that's just a quick side note.
Yeah.
Uh,
This was Jelly Bean Brian, I believe, was
Jelly
his
Bean,
name.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Jelly Bean. He did play in Europe, so that's how we got connected. He played in
Ah,
Italy, so this is how we connected. So I ended up visiting LaSalle in Philadelphia, and then flew all the way to Gonzaga in Spokane, Washington. Uh, and the second assistant at Spokane, Washington is today Mark Few is the head coach, and
ah.
he brought the team to national championship. So Gonzaga wasn't that good back in the days, and it was in Spokane, Washington so far. And then I ended up my last visit in University of South Florida in Tampa, where after visiting the street of Philadelphia, the White Mountains of Washington and Spokane, I end up in the beautiful green campus of University of South Florida, which had pools and golf carts, palm trees, sun. And I remember telling the coach pretty much very quick in the visit, where do I sign? And this is how I end up in South Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. That's really interesting that Gonzaga was already talking to you because before their rise to national prominence, that's how they built the program was recruiting students from overseas. And they saw kind of a talent gap. So another question I have for you is how did these recruiters spot you? Was it because of your time on the Israeli national team? Did that help give you exposure?
Yeah. So first of all, I was very, very eager and keen to study in the US and college. So that was kind of my dream. So I really pursued it hard, and I would contact coaches. Back in the day, we sent letters, but that's before the internet. So I would send those tapes, VHR tapes to the
Yeah.
coaches. Then you would call. There, really, it was more difficult than it is today, for sure. And uh, basically, once they see your tape, I mean, they call you back, and the negotiations start. So. I had more than three options. I just narrow it down to three, um, and it's a process which today, in our company we do it, more efficiently. So if student athletes who play sports, any sport at any level, I mean that's part of what we do today because I know how difficult it is to be in front of those coaches and I know how difficult is it to get seen, especially if you're a good player and you want to study in the U.S. Um, on one end is easier, but on the other end, there's a lot of competition as well. A lot of
Sure.
international students trying to get those basketball scholarship, um, which can get to today full ride scholarship, and even today now with the new rules. I mean, if you're a good basketball player, you can make a lot of money in college.
Yes. Yes, the landscape has certainly changed. Back in the day, you had a scholarship, which was very meaningful, but you weren't making money on top of the scholarship today, back
Yeah.
then. Yeah.
So now I'm looking at the kind of money that those athletes, basketball players do today, and I was like, well, I wish I was living to, I wish I was younger today so I can get not only the full ride scholarship, which I was very fortunate about, but actually set for life, because those kids get $500,000, 600,000, $1 million, if they're good, they'll get it. So
It has certainly ratcheted up the stakes of the recruitment of international basketball players in the U.S. David, I shared with you earlier, I played basketball as well in college at a much lower level because I was not being recruited by schools of that caliber. But I had our best player was German, 6'11" German, and if he were playing today, I think he would certainly be making hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. Back then, scholarship and free cafeteria food. But the
yeah.
cafeteria food was pretty good.
But I also want to add that even if you're not at that level of competition, there's so many opportunities for students who are not, they're not top players, right? And their dreams is not to play in the NBA or or professional soccer. A lot of opportunities. NCAA, NAIA, junior colleges, coaches are looking for those players. And sometimes, I mean, again, I mean, the challenge is how to get to be in front of those coaches, right?
Sure.
And how to get that opportunity that I had back in the days.
Sure, sure. And from an American perspective, the influx of student athletes from overseas, not just in basketball, but in other sports, it also helps introduce new styles of play in various sports. My German teammate, he just played differently, and that was a real competitive benefit. I also derived social benefits from my teammates from Slovenia and
Right.
Senegal and Germany. I learned about the world through those
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, I remember that each one of us has a different courses when they got upset, right? So you learn course in different in different languages.
yes,
In
yes, I
Slovenian, one of my teammates was from Slovenia, so I know some courses in Slovenian. So I'm all
yes.
set with life. Yeah.
Shout out to Dower Skornik if he ever listens, my
Uh,
Slovenian 7-footer teammate, from whom I learned all the Slovenian slurs. Yes,
exactly.
yes. Well, David, let me ask you this. Outside of recruitment and kind of the current bucket of NIL money, which has changed things, I wanted to ask you if there were benefits from the perspective of an international student, if there were benefits of being an athlete and if there were downsides. So let's start with kind of the pros. What were some of the benefits as an international student of plugging into that small sports community?
So I would say the first benefit is really financials, right? Because when you come in as an athlete, even if you're not the best athlete, there's a lot of scholarship available to you uh, that really saves you a lot of money,
Mm,
right? It can be 50% scholarship, $10,000, even if you're not big in academics. So, the university love to take athletes because what they bring to the camp onto the campus, and because you contribute to the team and you contribute to the campus and to the school, they would give you money for it. So that's a great way to save on money. Again, you don't have to be a top player or a top athlete. The second thing which I think is very important, when you come to the on campus, you automatically have a group of friends or a group that you kind of hang out with, right? You automatically have your teammates, your friends. You
Right.
don't have, you're not alone. You don't need to figure out. You don't need to try to make friends. You automatically, my teammates were my friends. I would hang out with them, and then the other circle would be the other athletes under the athletic department, so the soccer players, the tennis players. So it's really kind of a nice community of athletes who comes. Um, Obviously, girls, boys, parties, community life, a lot, very meaningful. You're not alone. You don't need to
Hmm.
figure out a lot. And the third thing, it's very important, the support that you get from the school when it comes to the academics itself, right? So there's a lot of tutoring, a lot of help through the athletic department. If you have problems, you can go to your assistant coach or someone in the athletic department that help you figure things out. So way more benefits than disadvantages.
Hmm.
The only thing I can say, well, it's not uh, it's not good is the pressure, right? So you do have the
Hmm.
pressure to, first of all, in your own sports, right? Because in the US, you have to compete, and the level of competition is tough. You always, you work hard, and you need to combine sports, training, academia, tests, exams, parties, all that together, right? So it can be a little bit stressful, but if you know how you manage your time, you're doing the right thing, you should have, very, very good experience. I don't remember any student athlete that had a bad experience throughout of my entire career working with student athletes.
Yeah, it's you get funneled into this pre-existing social support system, as you mentioned, which can be a real advantage. And it is stressful. One potential downside is always injuries. Scholarships are not technically guaranteed for 4 years. Most programs will honor those scholarships if you are injured. That can be a pain point. I was curious too, for you, it sounds like you had the US on your radar for a long time and probably had lots of familiarity with American culture. Were there any culture shock or anything strange about Tampa that took you a while to get used to?
Oh, so many. I just don't know where to start. But it does take some time to understand the culture. Uh, even if you think you know the cultures, watching movies. I mean, when you kind of the day to day life, uh, US is very different. Um, Again, so you don't want to get in trouble because you don't understand what the rules are,
Hmm.
right? I think I kind of got into trouble because I sometimes say the wrong thing, and just because the language barrier, not necessarily because mean purpose, but how you say thing, the way you say thing as international students, the your language barrier sometimes can be um, an issue. But again, that's usually 3 to 4 months. First semester is tough. Second semester easier. When you go into your sophomore year, I think you're pretty much 100% American. At least that's what I felt. Coming back to the US as a sophomore was way easier than the first year, which I didn't know what to expect. Right? Yeah, the food, the housing, the people, uh, the school life. Yeah. So first year always more difficult than the rest.
That's really interesting. That's a great piece of advice for all international students, is that, things get better both from
Oh,
English proficiency and also cultural acclimation after a year. I went from Oklahoma to a school that had a lot of big city kids, and it took me a year to adapt to
understand.
The pace of conversation. People would
I,
ask me, how are you doing? And I'd launch into a 15-minute answer, stuff like that.
I remember that when I came to South Florida, uh, 12, the team was, we were 12 players on the team. 10 of them was Afro-American guys from South Florida, which had a very thick Southern accent.
Mm.
I remember that first semester, I did not understand half of the words that they were talking to me. I was clueless. They would make jokes on me, you know,
Yeah.
and I was just like, I don't know what you just said, just like, and, and they had zero patience for me as well. So it was me and the other Slovenian, Luca, and both we were, with broken English, and then with their broken English, communication wasn't so good.
I had the exact same challenge. My little pod of freshman teammates, it was me, an Oklahoman, a guy from Germany, and a guy who's still a lifelong friend from Long Island. And I remember I called my grandmother, maybe in like the second week of college, and she said that I sounded like a Yankee after just
Oh,
2 weeks of being with my friend from Long Island. So
exactly.
yeah,
It is what it is. Yeah.
it is. And again, sports provide this great common language where you acclimate to English in that specific niche and can build from there. It's not that different from students in a particular civil engineering program where the language is civil engineering and you build from there. We also know that English proficiency is just kind of the baseline. As long as your English is good enough, over 4 years or 2 years in a university program, it just mushrooms from there. Um,
And I also, yeah, I mean, you're right, and especially because if you're talking about you take the TOEFL test, you do well on the TOEFL test, you think you know English, but when you actually arrive to the US, you realize there's a lot of different accents, different talk differently, right? And you also try to okay, like the people using different phrases, uh, people have different accent, you have your own accent. Uh, it's not weird, okay? So people, I think the US, especially on university, they are used to different language, kind of English. There's no one way to speak English. It takes time to understand it. So again, I mean, if I was an international student the first year, I mean, you don't need to worry about it, right?
hmm.
It's okay that people don't understand you. They used to it. It's okay that you speak in a broken English because people help you and support you. I think I found the US campus very, very friendly and welcoming. So and again, at the bottom line, it was a very, very profound experience, which I wish to every student who can study in the US, because it was very impactful on my life. And I see how the experience on college campus in the US specifically impact on other international students that arrive to campus. They go back to their countries very, very different from when they left
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
good, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. Well, David, one last question for you. Let's take a student athlete from Israel who maybe is getting close to making a decision about where to go to school. You mentioned fit. You mentioned if you like warm weather, pursue the warm weather. That's a perfectly reasonable way to decide. But any other tip for a student who may be in your shoes a while back as they assess where is the best fit?
The best tip is um, don't be stuck on those brand names, and just keep exploring. And that's going back to apply with. So I've seen so many great throughout my career. I've seen so many great schools out there, right? You mentioned Bucknell. I went to University of South Florida. Those names are not familiar to the average international students, but if you just go on Applywave, you'll see 200, 300 different schools in the US in different places, which are amazing opportunities, right? You don't have to be stuck on New York, NYU, or Miami or LA. Try to be open to see more opportunities in the Midwest, in the South, in the North, on the West Coast. Try to kind of explore more, see what's the value proposition those university has, and you'll be surprised not only from the amount of opportunities out there, also by the value that you can get out of it. You don't have to spend $50,000, $60,000 on school sometimes, because there's other schools out there that will be more than willing to accept you because you're international students and give you a scholarship and be very welcoming and help you and support you to, in your college career and in afterwards in the workforce, and get a good career. And so that's pretty much my tip. Just keep your eyes open, explore, and don't be no, I don't know this word specifically, but stay, try to look beyond the big name schools.
It's a great piece of advice. There are 4,000 degree granting institutions in the US, and many of them have more international students than you'd suspect. So the breadth and diversity of the American university landscape is a great thing to emphasize. So, David Adler, you are undoubtedly the first and only podcast guest I'll ever have who played against Kobe Bryant. So it was a great thrill to have you here today, and thanks so much for sharing some of your insights.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.